Hey guys, American Pizza Books here, and today I'm back at you with another book review, and this time I'm going to be reviewing The House of Thunder by Dean Koontz. Now, originally he wrote this under the pseudonym Lee Nichols. He wrote a lot of books under pseudonyms that he later republished, but the original publication date of this book was 1982, so it's a fairly old book. Now, I literally just finished this book like maybe half an hour ago, and I don't. It's kind of a mixed bag with this book. I don't really know how to feel. I'm kind of underwhelmed, to be really honest with you. So I felt the need to just make a review while my feelings are still fresh on this book. Now, I'm gonna go down my categories and kind of tell you what I thought, and then give those scores for each category. Then I'll give you my overall score for the book. But so the premise is that the main character, Susan Thornton, she wakes up in a hospital, and she's woken up from a 3-week coma, and she can't remember anything much about her life except her name, her age, and a few other things. She can't remember her work life or anything like that. She can remember her childhood and stuff like that, but up until recently, she can't remember. All the details are very foggy. She slowly starts to remember some things, but a lot of things are still blurry to her and everything. There's some things that she just downright can't remember. And soon enough, she starts seeing these 4 guys. Now, these 4 guys, back in her college days, she was dating this guy called Jerry, and he was going to join a fraternity, and there was a hazing ritual involving these 4 guys that went too far, and they ended up basically beating Jerry to death. And so now these 4 guys are haunting her and are in this hospital, and she doesn't know whether they're actually there or if they're just hallucinations or something. But yeah, that's basically the plot of it, or the premise of it anyways, I should say. So, while the premise isn't completely, it may not be 100% original, but honestly, I don't grade premises in terms of originality. As long as the author puts a good spin on it and does it and executes the premise at least really well, then I'll give it 5 out of 5. So for the premise, I gave it 5 out of 5. It was really interesting to me. The premise at least made me want to read the book. So yeah. Next category would be the characters. Now, the characters in this book, while they weren't complete cardboard cutouts, they did feel kind of shallow. The main character, Susan Thornton, was probably the most fleshed out character, which isn't really a surprise, because I mean, we're following her from her point of view. But even with her, she felt she felt a bit shallow. The other characters in the book, there's the Dr. Jeffrey McGee. He ends up being a love interest in this book. There's kind of a romance on the side in this book as well with Susan and Jeffrey McGee, the doctor. There's a few other characters as well, but again, none of them feel that fleshed out. Again, not cardboard cutouts, but they still feel kind of shallow. Dean Koontz, I've probably read only a small portion of what Dean's written. Dean Koontz has written a lot of books, but I know that Dean Koontz is capable of writing much better characters than this. I mean, you know, Odd Thomas being a good example of that. So, in terms of the characters, not his best work. I didn't really feel particularly attached to any of them. So for character, I just gave it 2.5 out of 5. Not great. Pacing. Now, the pacing was probably, aside from the premise, it was probably the best thing about this book. The pacing was, for the most part, it was pretty fast pacing. I mean, it never, to me at least, it never got slow or particularly dull or anything like that. So for the pacing, I just gave it 5 out of 5. With Dean Koontz, you can most of the time you can count on Dean Koontz for having pretty tightly paced books. So pacing, I gave it 5 out of 5. The writing, I gave 3.5 out of 5. Now, sometimes with Dean Koontz books, Dean Koontz has a tendency to overwrite, and in my opinion, he kind of just sometimes word vomits onto the pages, and there were a few times in this book where I felt like that's what happened, particularly when he just started getting into all the medical jargon and stuff like that. So I felt like that was going on. I also felt like the dialogue wasn't the best. Again, I feel like Dean Koontz has done dialogue better than this. And I mean, admittedly this was a more earlier, this was an earlier work, a much earlier work of Koontz's, so there is that. But again, just the dialogue didn't feel great. It felt kind of silly at times, especially with the main villains. No. So for writing, I just gave it 3.5 out of 5. It's not bad writing by any means, but it's at the same time it's not great. And here's the thing with the writing, I'm not like picky in terms, like, it doesn't have to be like freaking Ernest Hemingway writing for me to consider it to be good. Like, as long as the writing is serving as a good medium to the story, that's all I care about. If I can read a book and forget that I'm reading, written sentences, and it can transfer me into the story, that's all I care about. However, in this book a few times, the writing and the dialogue kind of took me out, and I was just like, wait a minute, this is kind of, this is a little silly. But no, so writing, and give it 3.5 out of 5. Journey, see, I thought this book started out really interesting. I thought it started out really good. But then when you get halfway through, well, a little more than halfway through, really, like the last part of the book, like the last 50 or 60 pages or so, it really brought it down for me, because I had all sorts of theories about what the resolution was going to be, what the twist was going to be and stuff. And what the twist ended up being just was kind of underwhelming and honestly kind of convoluted and not terribly believable to me. I mean, I understand that not most of the time, especially when you're reading like fiction and stuff, not everything is going to be 100% believable. But to me, that just the twist and the solution and the ending and the wrap-up all felt just too convenient, too unbelievable, too convoluted. So I really didn't enjoy how this book ended. It was really underwhelming to me. And so for that, I'm going to give The Journey 3 out of 5. And that kind of ties in with the ending. Like I said, the ending just felt way too convenient. I felt like there were still some unanswered questions. And I don't know, just everything just felt like too nicely wrapped up and everything, and I don't know, it just, like I said, just too convenient. The ending definitely did not satisfy. It just felt rushed. It felt like Dean Koontz kind of didn't know how to end it, or he had a deadline, so he just kind of ended it in a very rushed way, very convenient way. So I give the ending 2.5 out of 5. It wasn't great. So overall, this is not a terrible book by any means, okay? Like, I would, don't turn your nose up at this book. I would say give it a chance. You might enjoy it more than I did. It's certainly not a boring book by any means, and it's not a shallow book by any means either, but it's just not one of Koontz's best. It's just not the best book in general. I feel like with Dean Koontz you could do better. I feel the same way about this book that I did Mr. Murder. Now, I feel like Mr. Murder is a better book overall, but in terms of like the ending and the twist and the solution, I feel very much the same way about Mr. Murder that I do about this book. Just, it felt, I already went into that, but it didn't, I wasn't satisfied with it. I didn't really care for how that was handled. But overall, like I said, it's not terrible by any means. You could do a lot worse. So overall, I give the book 3 out of 5 stars. So yeah, I don't know. It kind of sucks. Like I said, I was looking forward to reading this one, because I mean, the premise was so interesting, but just the way it was tied up and everything, I really didn't care for it, to be really honest with you guys. And I won't go into that. I won't spoil anything, but I'll just say that yeah, I didn't care for how it was tied up. I didn't care for the twist or anything like that. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this one, and I'll be back at you guys soon with more reviews. So, peace and keep on reading.